Do you feel like you're in kind of this midlife transition point, or sometimes we might even call it a pivot point, in which you just feel really stuck, or lost, or maybe even you're just grieving the life that you thought that you might have, that you're either not going to have, or you're not sure you're going to have, and you really are at a point where you're like, I just need to figure out who I am and what I want moving forward, after this point. It might be that you're in the middle of a divorce, you're recently divorced, there might have been a death of a loved one, or maybe even you're an empty nester for the first time, and you're kind of like, what the hell do I do now? What's next for me? What does my life look like? In all those situations, we're all asking, what does my life look like now? And it's scary, isn't it? Like, I remember for myself, suddenly life is very different, and we're on our own in ways that we didn't expect to be. Life looks different than we expected or have been used to, and suddenly you're just, it just feels scary, and you aren't really sure who you are in that situation, or maybe even who you want to be. So I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about what we can do when we're in that situation. I want to tell you a little bit about my story, and share the grief that I went through in the middle of that, because I don't want to belittle it. Like, this is a hard space to be in, right? Like, it really sucks, and there's a lot of grief in it, of the loss of dreams, the loss of plans, the loss of life as we knew it, and then even to think about making things different and moving forward, is a whole different thing. And then who are we in the process of moving forward, or on the other side of that? Like, what does our life look like? And sometimes in the midst of the 20s and 30s, when we're like getting stuff done and working hard and making our career, having our families, we get a little lost in the shuffle, and then it's like we pop out somewhere in our 40s or 50s, and we're like, oh my gosh, who am I, and what do I want out of life? Like, is this what I wanted? Is this all there is to it? For some lucky people, maybe they don't ever have to ask that question. Actually, I'm not sure if that's lucky or not, but anyway, that's a whole different conversation. But I really want to talk about that, and I want to talk about what was helpful to me to kind of navigate my way through that stuckness, that fear, that feeling lost, and almost feeling like I'm terrified to make a move, almost, because I'm not sure what it's gonna look like when I do. And so let me introduce myself real quick. I'm Dawn Pick-Benson. I am a writer and a self-discovery travel coach, and I work with women, almost kind of just showing them how travel can actually help with these stuck points, can help us move through finding ourselves, can help us rediscover ourselves, help us find joy again, right? Because that's even another question. Once you're going through all these things and all this grief, it's really hard, and it's almost like you wonder, am I ever gonna be happy again? Am I ever gonna laugh again? Am I gonna feel normal at some point? So those are all questions that I think we have. So I just want to tell you a little bit about my story, and hopefully that is helpful in some way. So I was in a similar point. I was in my mid-40s. Kind of over time, it was sort of me, a little slow realization of, I have this job that I'm not sure I love. I'm in a relationship that isn't going well, and I'm realizing more and more isn't healthy for me, emotionally, spiritually, any of those things. And so as I started to dig into that, I began to ask the question, like, is this the life I imagined? Is this really what I want for my life? And when the question for me was no, the harder question for me was, okay, so if it's not, then am I brave enough to do something about it? And I think that's the question we have to ask all of ourselves if we're in a place of stuckness, of feeling lost. We could stay and be stuck, and sometimes we need to do that for a while. But at some point, there's the question of, are we brave enough to do something about it? And so I kind of tiptoed into that answer. And I realized I had a lot of voices in my head and a lot of voices around me, kind of opinions about what to do, and also that normal everyday life that we have. And so for me, I knew I needed to get out of my daily routine. I needed to figure out a way to listen to that still small voice, that intuitive voice inside, that voice of wisdom. I had kind of lost it. I had lost her. I didn't know how to listen to that voice anymore. It was like everything was so loud around me that I couldn't hear it. So for me, I thought, I'm going to go overseas. I'm going to go on a trip. I need to get away from all of this racket, all of this, just the thing, because we all have our routines, like this daily routine, all the voices, all the stuff. I need to pull myself out of that and put myself in a space where I can listen to that voice. And so I took a trip to Europe, and I spent, I was lucky enough to be able to spend 3 months overseas. I don't think that you have to have 3 months. I just could work remotely, but I took that time and I really listened to myself and began to find myself again. It was a long process. I had to feel into my grief, to my lostness. I had to remember who I was and the power that I had. What are my skills? What can I, all of those things. And when I ended up eventually getting divorced, I actually went on another trip after that. So twice I have had these transformative travel experiences, probably actually more than that, but these are two that I want to talk about, in which I was able to kind of create space for myself, for some healing and for some clarity, and to really find out who I was again, to really discover that. And it was a process. These things don't happen overnight, but to eventually to get to the point where I think I am now, where I'm really delighting in life. I'm really laughing again. I'm rediscovering myself, finding direction, purpose, clarity. But I think that we have to fight for who we want to become. We have to fight for that. We have to advocate for ourselves and give ourselves permission to take that time to figure out who we are. And it doesn't have to be travel for everyone, but for you it might be. It might be that this appeals to you, that you're like, oh my gosh, Dawn, I would love to be able to go, for example, to Italy for a month and to just wander the streets and taste the wine and, really find myself again. And what I want to say is that is possible. It is absolutely possible. You don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to have a lot of money. There are tips and tricks to figure it out. I'm not wealthy. I wasn't wealthy. I was in the middle of, a divorce that was scary to me, in terms of all those things. So, but there are ways, I think, that we have to, if we give ourselves permission to honor ourselves in that way, we also give ourselves permission to get creative and to figure out how to make that happen. That's something that I want to say too, is it's so important when we're in that spot that we're stuck to kind of give ourselves permission to figure out how to get out of it, to be brave enough to do that. To borrow one another's bravery if we need to see other women doing it, to watch other people who are doing this as well, who might inspire us, so that we can look at it and go, oh my gosh, she's doing it, I could do it too. It is possible to go on a trip like that and to really rediscover yourself, to find out who you are and what you want again. I know that you might be a little bit worried and scared about well, now how is that even possible? Who's going to take care of my dog, my yard, my house, all those things? Yes, those are big things. I have to figure it out every time I travel. Who's going to take care of my stuff? But I do believe that everything's figure outable. And so I would love to just leave you first with the question, to first let yourself imagine, what would it be like if you gave yourself a week, 2, maybe even a month, to go somewhere and to just rediscover yourself? What would that look like for you? Close your eyes. Maybe just do it right now. Like, what do you see? What's around you? Is there water? Is it cafes? Is it a beautiful beach? What do you smell? Do you smell the seawater? Do you smell food cooking? Do you hear people mingling and talking in other languages, or do you hear lapping water? What are you tasting? Are you sipping on amazing wine? Are you eating something that you've never had before and it's just delighting you? Allow yourself to imagine what that might look like for you if you were able to take that time for yourself. And then imagine how empowered you might feel from that, to be able to come back. Like one of the women in my travel coaching group said, I went to France by myself. I can do anything. That's what I want for you. That's what I would love for you to be able to do, to be able to use travel as a way to move through some of these feelings that you have, but also to come away empowered, where you come back and say, I did this on my own and I can do just about anything. So the takeaway is, I would love for you to find yourself a quiet space and to just run through that little exercise I just did, to imagine what that might look like. Don't get bogged down in like, oh my gosh, that's not even possible for me right now. We're not talking about possibilities. We're just talking about if you were to be able to transport yourself somewhere to a place in which you feel like you could discover your magic again. Where would that be? What would that look like, feel like, taste, smell? Let yourself think about that. Either visualize it. If you're a writer, if you like to write things down, write it. You could even cut out magazine pictures of it, or go online and find pictures, or music. It could be anything. But that is just a little simple takeaway for you to just begin to allow yourself to imagine what it might look like. You don't have to do anything yet at all. Just imagine it. What might it look like for you? And let yourself have that feeling, how amazing that might feel. So I would love if you have any questions or want to talk further about how this is possible for you. Feel free to message me. You can follow me online as well. I have an Instagram account at dawnpickbenson.com. I'll put the links in the video notes. I also have a Facebook group called Brave Journey. So I'd love to hear your questions and chat. I offer a free 30-minute consultation. So if anything I said piques your interest, or you'd love to figure out how could I do this, or you might feel like, yeah, that's nice, Dawn, for you, but I can't do that, I'd love to talk to you about how that might be possible, what that might look for you. So yeah, again, I am Dawn Pick Benson. I'm a self-discovery travel coach, and I'd love to hear from you.